And Ian Castleberry joining the Wise Guys, of course, on the D.C. Creasman Jewelers Wise Lines. And thanks to D.C. and the staff for bringing us Ian and our NFL Gold Nuggets feature. Of course, Ian with Barrett Sports Media and with the Wise Guys each and every week talking baseball and NFL. How you doing, pal?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Good. Keeping busy today, as I know you are as well. And let's start first with, we've got a few things to get to. And really, we never really have had a chance to kind of go over some of the more recent NFL coaching hires because there's just been so much going on. But, Ian, I want to get your thoughts first on Kevin O'Connell, the new Vikings head coach, and the former Rams offensive coordinator was called innovative by the Vikings at his press conference. That's really good news, Ian, because Minnesota has some weapons on offense. How do you like this hire for Vikings fans?
Yeah, I think this is a great hire for the reason you mentioned. The Vikings offense should be explosive. Kirk Cousins, whatever you think of him as a quarterback, he still threw for more than 4,000 yards, 33 touchdowns, I believe. He's a good quarterback. Is he a top-tier quarterback? Maybe not, but you look at the weapons around him. Dalvin Cook, one of the best running backs in the NFL. Justin Jefferson had a very promising rookie season. Adam Thielen also an excellent receiver, tight end Tyler Conklin. So you look at those weapons and you think, well, if Kevin O'Connell takes the same philosophies that he applied with the Los Angeles Rams in winning the Super Bowl, some of these guys you could argue are better than who the Rams have at certain positions. So this looks like a very good hire. And as we talked about last week, O'Connell adding a veteran defensive coordinator, Donatel, to run the defense over there. So he should be focused completely on the offense and let Donatel run the defense there.
What had to be impressive about Kevin O'Connell with the Rams, too, down the stretches, Robert Woods went out with the Rams, their top wide receiver. They had to get some new wide receivers in there, and then even those guys had injuries, and they just seemed to, they weren't flawless in their playoff games, but they found a way to get it done late. And that was really, I think, some impressiveness on there with the injuries they had, as he was able to plug in people to get the job done.
And I think you look at the Sean McVay tree, it's pretty successful. It's not the Bill Belichick tree. Brandon Staley, Matt LaFleur, those guys have gone on to run pretty successful operations when they've taken over as head coach. So, I think Kevin O'Connell certainly looks like he could follow that path.
It's interesting you mentioned the Belichick coaching tree, which for me over the years, it has a lot of dead branches on it. Here's McVay. He's in his mid-30s, and he's already got, 2 coaches now, 3 of his former coaches now doing, and as you mentioned, Mike, two that are doing very, very well at the moment. Hey, Ian, what about former Niners OC Mike McDaniel to the Dolphins? This guy looks more like my high school math teacher than he does an NFL coach, but he seems confident that he can take Tua to the next level. How do you like this hire?
Yeah, McDaniel, he is a kind of an odd guy, like you said. He certainly does not fit the physical profile or visualization that people would have of a football coach. He looks more like an intern or an analyst or something like that. But, he was very successful running the offense for the San Francisco 49ers. And look at how productive their running game is. And I think you have to look at that. The Dolphins don't have the same personnel the 49ers did, and they need to improve their offensive line, both in run blocking and pass blocking. But if Mike McDaniel can improve the running game for the Dolphins the way he did with the 49ers, that will certainly help. And then the important part, McDaniel is excited about working with quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Look at the work he did with Jimmy Garoppolo, whatever you think about him, and he does make some bad mistakes, but he was also a very productive quarterback at times, and he helped develop Trey Lance. So Tua, he's been a very accurate passer during his time. I think he just needs some more weapons. He certainly needs more protection. Something Dolphins fans, I think, should be really excited about is that McDaniel seems really excited about getting to work with Jalen Waddle. He had his rookie season from Alabama. Look at what the 49ers did with somebody like Deebo Samuel. And Waddle might not be the same build. Maybe he can't act as a running back like Deebo Samuel did. But you look at how creative McDaniel was in creating ways for Deebo Samuel to get the ball. And if he can do anything like that with Jalen Waddle, I think that could be extremely exciting.
As a Bills fan, Mike? How do you like it?
Well, I think it's a great move for Miami. I think, look at McDaniel, the 49ers are dropped interception away from being in the Super Bowl. They were a little up and down with the injuries they had, especially at the quarterback position, but they got the job done late and had the Rams beat in the fourth quarter, up 17-7. Just couldn't quite finish it off, but they went up at Green Bay and they won in Dallas. That's two pretty amazing road wins for a team that was so up and down. This should give the Dolphins fans something to be excited about. And for us Bills fans, you get a little nervous about to get the right coach in there and to get them going, because a lot of pieces are in place for them to be very good. And so be interesting to see how he does. But there's always the adjustment to being a first-time head coach and that's a unique place, Miami, as well, to coach.
Yeah, I can see NFL officials early next year in the season telling McDaniel dude, you got to get back. Like water boys aren't allowed to be on the field and be like, oh, I'm the head coach. I mean, he looks at. Everyone's always looking at his birth and, he's mixed race, and it's like, who cares about that? I just think he just looks like my high school math teacher. But he is a brilliant mind from what I've read. He's incredibly passionate. He's going to work as hard as anyone out there. And
he should be entertaining at the press conferences too. I mean,
yes.
Offensive coordinators don't talk to the press much, but he did. And he was always very funny, very engaging with the press. So we'll see if that continues now that he's a head coach.
Yeah, you just think one of the reasons Brian Flores got fired is because he had 4 offensive coordinators in 2 years, and we can talk about some of the other stuff with Flores, and maybe he shouldn't have got fired too. But there was some dysfunction with the Dolphins under Flores, and you just think if they can get things all on the same page. I mean, they had back-to-back winning seasons. Flores went 4-2 against the evil empire of the Patriots, and if they can just get their stuff in a row, I mean, the pieces there to be a pretty good team.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. That division's going to be shaping up real nicely, except for the Jets, of course. Maybe they'll join the party in 2025. Who knows? They got some pieces. I saw Omar Ahmed, who's a trainer for them and a proud UNC Asheville graduate, went to Robertson, and he thinks he did say that the game in Buffalo was the coldest he's ever been in his life, but and everything. But confirmed. But anyway, he thinks they got some good pieces and they made some progress. So watch out for the Jets too next year. We'll see where it goes. Hey, Ian Castleberry plays with the Wise Guys with Barrett Sports Media and weekly here on the show. And, of course, Ian presented today by our friends at DC Creasman Jewelers. And, Ian, this is interesting. What's going on with former Cowboys, well-known PR guy? I mean, this guy's kind of considered a legend in the field, Rich Dalrymple. And apparently the team paying a $2.4 million settlement for voyeurism. This is a creepy story, Ian.
Yeah, this is kind of gross, unfortunately. As you said, Richard Dalrymple is well regarded throughout football, but the Cowboys paid out a $2.4 million settlement, as you said, to their cheerleading squad because of an incident in 2015, allegedly, where Dalrymple was standing behind a partial wall at the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders' locker room and was filming them changing clothes with his iPhone. And he had access to areas apparently that he shouldn't have, and there are other accusations that he's taken quote-unquote upskirt photos of female executives or people who work in the Cowboys front office. Yeah. This is somewhat similar to some allegations that we heard about with the Washington football team. We never saw anything as blatant as somebody actually filming women changing with his iPhone, but it was a situation where the cheerleaders were doing calendar shoots, photo shoots, and maybe asked to take off their clothes, and some of that footage being filmed not for public consumption, but allegations were maybe this was for Larry Michael, the team's communication director, and of course Dan Snyder. So yeah, this is a really gross.
How do you respond to something like that? He says, well, my retirement was planned before, but this does not help his overall legacy with Dallas, because he was one of the better ones. But this is, and a typical guy gets caught. He's like, I didn't do it. You're lying.
Yeah, this is really sorry to hear this, because not that I know Rich, but Bill Hillier, our old baseball coach at UNC Asheville, Bill and Rich knew each other very, very well. And I think they both were in college at Otterbein, a college way back in Ohio, and just, he kind of he worked hard and stuff. I remember, he tried to tell young sports information people that were interested in getting sports information, hey, volunteer, you're not get paid every time. Hey, he said, I started my career taking up a typewriter up 3 flights of stairs so they could type play-by-play. So he was an old school guy that started off there. And again, he was real good friends with our old baseball coach, Bill Hillier, that Bill's son is the head coach at Asheville High School. And Rich also got very close to Jimmy Johnson, and Jimmy they were at Miami together. And then when Jimmy Johnson went to Dallas, he brought Rich with him. And I'm not a big Jimmy Johnson fan either, but Bill told me a story that he had a friend who had cancer, was struggling, but was a big Cowboys fan, and he called Rich, and Jimmy Johnson wrote the guy a 2-page letter, not typed. He wrote him a 2-page letter. Hey, you stay strong, you stay. And it really had an influence on Bill, the way Rich did things like this. And I remember when my mom had cancer, instead, Bill wrote her a 2-page letter instead, saying, hey, keep fighting, keep battling and everything. And so you just never know what's in people's heads, and just, you could be a great person 98% of the time, but that 2% sleaziness will get you in trouble every time.
I mean, you can't. The Cowboys paid $2.4 million, so there was something there, obviously.
Yes,
yeah. By the way, Ian and Mike, speaking of that the football team, I still can't get over the Commanders. The football team's investigation. The NFL hired an outside firm to investigate that, and they said they didn't want recommendations. They just wanted to know what went down. But the lead investigator, she did say that if she was allowed to forward her opinion to Commissioner Goodell, that her opinion would be that Daniel Snyder does not need to own an NFL team, and he needs to be basically vanquished from the NFL. My words, not hers. I find that interesting as well. Of course, Goodell is probably not going to do a damn thing about it. So, but I'm glad this is all being caught. This stuff needs to be discussed, man. You cannot be doing something like that. And think that's okay, and then of course not pay any punishment for that. And by punishment, even if it's just your reputation is going to be soiled at that point. Wow, it's like a Bravo story there. Looks like Aaron Donald and Sean McVay are coming back to the Rams. Sometimes those Super Bowl celebration speeches reveal a lot, don't they?
The worst time to ask somebody if they're going to retire or if they're coming back is right after they finish a game. I mean, I understand, like Michelle Tafoya and so that this was a rumor that Aaron Donald might retire after the game, but I just don't. Once in a while, yes, I guess it's worth asking. You could get an honest answer there, but if this was something he was thinking about, I just think right after playing a game, right after winning a championship especially, is the worst time to ask that question or even to consider that answer. And maybe the championship parade is a bad time to do it, too. You're caught up in the celebration. You're there with your teammates. Fans are cheering you on. But it certainly sounds like Aaron Donald is going to return. He's under contract for another 3 seasons, although if he did retire, this would probably be the time to do it because the cap hit, the dead cap hit, would be lessened after this season. But he is under contract for 3 more years. And then Sean McVay, kind of a similar thing. Is this a good time to ask him whether or not he wants to retire at the end of a very long season? But there have been a lot of rumors that he could go into television. There have been reports ESPN wants him badly, that if he did retire, ESPN would be right there with a contract asking him if he wanted to be on Monday Night Football. And, you guys have probably heard or talked about this too. The money for being a broadcaster these days is better. Yeah, it's better for than being a coach. Sean McVay, he makes $8.5 million as the Rams coach, which is obviously fantastic. But Tony Romo makes $17 million as a broadcaster. Now I think that's a one-time, maybe like a unicorn of a contract, but we're going to see. Troy Aikman, he's going to get a big raise, whether he stays with Fox, whether he goes to Amazon. Sean McVay, if he is in the Monday Night Football booth and their number one game analyst like John Gruden was, he's going to get a big payday too. But it appears that both McVay and Donald are going to, as they said, run it back and see if they can do this again next season.
Wait a minute. You mean they would take Brian Greasy out and bring in Sean McVay? Well, I just can't believe that.
But you know what, though? I mean, honestly, that Monday Night Football crew, I like those guys, that trio. I think they're really
okay,
they're solid.
But I don't, being facetious here, I think they'd probably send Brian Greasy out to the Big 12 game or Big 10 games, whatever he does and stuff.
And Louis,
his contract is up, so that's one of the issues here.
Weren't they always wasn't this sort of a stopgap for ESPN, just kind of like, well, hopefully we can get Romo in 2 years or something? They were kind of, I don't think they saw Brian Greasy as a long-term answer, did they?
Well, Louis Riddick as well. I think both those guys would be gone if Sean McVay.
Oh yeah, came in. Yeah. I mean, they're fine, but and they're better than I thought they'd be, to be honest with you. But better than Boogie McFarland, but better than Boogie, whatever his name was.
Boogie McFarland,
whatever his name was a couple years ago.
Go ahead, Ian.
No, I was just saying, Mike's right, though, that this was kind of a stopgap. They're hoping they could get Tony Romo. They could hope they could get the golden goose of Peyton Manning, which that's not going to happen. I mean, especially with the success of the Manning cast. And ESPN and Omaha Productions actually extended their contract for a fourth year, so there's going to be more Manning cast. So Peyton Manning's not going to go to Monday Night Football. I think Steve Levy, Brian Greasy, Louis Riddick, they're fine. I think they're good. I think the longer you keep them together, they have a chance of getting better. I think ESPN's made the mistake of trying to make a big splash too often. Sean McVay would probably be quite good based on his personality, but I don't think it would be a bad thing for ESPN to just stick with what they have.
Where does ESPN going to get this money? I mean, it wasn't too long ago we were reading lots of stories about their, financially they were putting themselves in a really bad position by overpaying for, like Monday Night Football and everything else. So it's kind of interesting that ESPN could be willing to open up the pocketbook, which I figured was probably a short leash on, but who knows at this point. But I'd love to see Sean McVay in the broadcast booth. He's just that dynamic. Ian, before we let you go, you wrote a great column at BarrettSportsMedia.com about what you consider to be a remarkable broadcasting moment by the Madden and Summerall of figure skating commentating teams, Tara Lipinski and Johnny Weir. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people listening listen to figure skating, but Tara Lipinski and Johnny Weir, they are very good at, like you said, they are at the top of their sport. They're effusive with their praise when a skater does well, but they are not afraid to be harsh with their criticism when it warrants. Karen Chen, U.S. figure skater, she had a bad fall, and Johnny Weir said it was just a total disaster after looking at the replay. But fans probably know, listeners probably know that there's been some controversy in women's figure skating at this Olympics about Kamila Valieva, a 15-year-old Russian skater, testing positive for a banned substance. But she has been allowed to compete or continue competing, partially because of her age. She's 15 years old. I think there's some thought also that the Russian committee and Valieva's people didn't have sufficient time to mount a defense before the Winter Olympics began. And I think there's some question as to the evidence available for her failed drug test. But she was allowed to compete, but Weir and Lipinski and many in the figure skating community feel that Valieva should not have been allowed to compete. And she competed Tuesday night. And I guess you could sort of call this a silent protest. During her skate, Lipinski and Weir didn't say anything. They were virtually silent throughout the entire skate.
Which is hard for them.
A broadcaster's job is to talk, and they didn't talk. And then at the very end, they made it quite clear that they didn't think she should be allowed to compete. I just thought it was, as I wrote, a remarkable moment, both in candor and stance about a controversial sports story.
Yeah. And quickly to point out what you wrote, Ian, but yet at the same time, they did not start trashing this young lady, because chances are she is I'm sure someone in the Russian athletic, whatever they call their division, I don't think this was her idea. And I think that's part of what's happening here is that, she's only 15, but still, if you test positive, you test positive. I had no idea there were rules in place if you were 15 years old and you tested positive for performance enhancing drugs that you'd be okay to skate. I mean, who knew? But it seems pretty sketchy.
Yeah, Valieva is scheduled to skate tonight, so we'll see how if people are interested in tuning in, whether Weir and Lipinski maintain their stance and just choose really not to say anything because they feel quite strongly that she shouldn't be skating right now.
Wow. Michael Gore, you want to add anything?
No, just I think she already has skated, so I don't want to. If people haven't seen it, this is I think she skated this morning.
Yes,
she skated this morning, and anyway, I don't want to ruin for people who haven't seen it and stuff. Obviously, you can check your phone. We'll have to find out how she
we
did.
We could devote a whole segment to how the 13-hour time difference is just killed these Olympics.
Yes, it is.
Maybe we'll do that post-Olympics. Awesome stuff as always. Ian Castleberry joining us with Barrett Sports Media and barrettsportsmedia.com. Thanks as always, my friend. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. Great talking to you.
You too, pal. Thank you, Ian. Ian Castleberry with the Wise Guys on the DC Creasman Jewelers Wise Lines.